30,000 years ago, the world was locked in a rhythm of ice and wind, a planet shaped by cold oceans, vast glaciers, and unstable coastlines. Humanity was no longer new, but survival was still fragile. Early modern humans had already spread far beyond their African origins, reaching Europe, Asia, and parts of Australia. Yet the greatest challenge they faced was not land, predators, or cold alone. It was water. The sea, unpredictable and unforgiving, stood between humans and new worlds. To cross it meant risk beyond memory, but to stay behind meant slow extinction as climates shifted and resources vanished. This period belonged to fully developed Homo sapiens, people who thought, felt, and feared much like we do today. They created art, mourned their dead, told stories through gesture and sound, and planned for the future. But despite their cognitive abilities, they lived without metal, agriculture, or written language. Their survival depended on cooperation, deep environmental knowledge, and a willingness to move when the land could no longer sustain them. Migration was not an ambition, it was a necessity forced by hunger, climate, and population pressure. The Ice Age shaped every decision. Massive glaciers locked up much of the world's water, lowering sea levels and exposing land bridges that no longer exist today. Coastlines stretched farther outward, revealing rich but temporary environments filled with shellfish, fish, seabirds, and marine mammals. These coastal zones became lifelines. Early humans learned that the sea, while dangerous, could also provide food more reliably than inland landscapes devastated by cold and drought. Life near the ocean demanded new skills. Tides shifted daily, storms arrived without warning, and waves could destroy shelters overnight. Early humans adapted by observing patterns: when fish gathered, when tides retreated, when storms brewed. This knowledge was not written or taught formally. It was passed through imitation, memory, and shared experience. Children grew up watching adults read the sea like a living thing, learning where survival lay hidden beneath moving water. Eventually, necessity pushed humans beyond the shoreline. In regions like Southeast Asia, Australia, and the Mediterranean, land alone could no longer support growing populations. Animals migrated or went extinct, plants failed during colder seasons. Across the water, distant landmasses promised new hunting grounds and untouched resources. These lands were visible on the horizon or known through stories carried by generations. The decision to cross the sea was not impulsive. It was calculated, debated, and feared. Early seafaring did not involve ships as we imagine them. There were no sails, compasses, or metal tools. Instead, humans used simple watercraft built from what nature provided. Logs hollowed by fire and stone tools became crude canoes. Bundles of reeds were tied into floating platforms. Driftwood was lashed together with plant fibers and animal sinew. These vessels were fragile, heavy, and difficult to control, but they could float, and sometimes floating was enough. The act of launching into open water required courage shaped by desperation. Once land disappeared behind them, there was no turning back. Waves soaked their bodies, cold bit into exposed skin, and exhaustion set in quickly. Storms could rise suddenly, turning calm seas into walls of water. Many voyages likely ended in death, their stories lost forever. What survives is not the record of failure, but the proof of success found in archaeology and genetics. Navigation relied on senses rather than instruments. Humans watched the sun's path, memorized star positions, and observed the flight of birds that returned to land at dusk. Ocean currents, wind direction, cloud formations, and the color of water offered clues. This knowledge accumulated slowly, refined by trial and tragedy. Those who survived passed their understanding to others, creating an invisible map written into human memory. Survival at sea extended beyond reaching land. Voyages took time, sometimes days, sometimes longer. Food had to be carried or caught. Fresh water was precious and limited. Salt sprayed dried skin and cracked lips. Exposure weakened the body, and illness spread easily in cramped conditions. Children cried, elders weakened, and fear never fully faded. Yet cooperation held these groups together. No one survived alone on the water. When land was finally reached, it was not always salvation. New environments brought unfamiliar predators, climates, and diseases. Humans arriving on distant shores had to adapt quickly or perish. They learned new hunting strategies, identified edible plants, and adjusted shelter designs. Those who succeeded expanded their territories, gradually reshaping ecosystems as top predators and intelligent foragers. Coastal migration became a defining pattern of human expansion. Archaeological evidence suggests that humans followed shorelines across Southeast Asia, island hopping toward Australia tens of thousands of years earlier. By 30,000 years ago, these maritime traditions were already ancient. People understood that the sea connected worlds rather than separating them. What once appeared as an edge became a pathway. Social structure played a critical role in survival. Groups were small, tightly bonded, and interdependent. Decisions were made collectively or guided by experienced individuals whose memory extended across decades. Elders carried knowledge of past migrations, storms, and seasons. Their survival value was immense, even if their physical strength had faded. Protecting them meant protecting the group's memory. Technology remained simple but effective. Stone tools were adapted for fishing, cutting marine animals, and shaping wood. Bone hooks, harpoons, and spears allowed humans to exploit aquatic food sources. Nets made from plant fibers trapped fish in shallow waters. These innovations reduced reliance on large land animals, which were becoming scarcer in many regions. The sea also influenced human psychology. Facing vast open water reshaped perception of risk, distance, and possibility. Humans learned to imagine places they could not yet see, a cognitive leap that strengthened planning and abstract thinking. The idea of beyond became real. This mental expansion was as important as the physical one. Death was constant, but accepted. Drownings, storms, and failed landings claimed lives regularly. Mourning rituals were simple or non-existent, yet loss was deeply felt. Survival required emotional resilience. Groups that broke under grief did not last. Those who endured learned to carry loss without being consumed by it. Children born into coastal groups grew up with the sea as part of their identity. They learned to swim, dive, and fish at young ages. Fear was taught alongside respect. The sea was neither enemy nor friend. It was power. This balanced understanding allowed humans to coexist with one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. Migration at sea also changed human biology subtly. Selection favored individuals with endurance, efficient metabolism, and resistance to cold and dehydration. Coordination, balance, and spatial awareness became valuable traits. Over generations, these pressures shaped bodies and minds in ways that still echo in modern populations. By 30,000 years ago, humans had reached places no other hominin ever had. Neanderthals were disappearing, Denisovans fading into genetic memory. Homo sapiens survived not because they were stronger or faster, but because they were flexible. The sea tested that flexibility more harshly than any land predator. What makes these journeys extraordinary is not the technology, but the intention. Early humans did not drift accidentally into history. They chose to move, knowing the risks, because staying still was more dangerous. Migration was an act of hope, rooted in realism, a belief that survival lay somewhere else, even if that place was unseen. No written records describe these voyages, no names are known, yet their legacy surrounds us. Every human living outside Africa today carries the inheritance of those who crossed water without certainty. Their courage is embedded in our DNA, their knowledge echoed in our curiosity to explore beyond known boundaries. Life 30,000 years ago was defined by motion. Stillness meant death. The sea, vast and merciless, became a teacher. It demanded cooperation, patience, and humility. It punished arrogance and rewarded preparation. Those lessons carried humanity forward. Migration and survival at sea were not isolated achievements. They were part of a larger human story, one of endurance against uncertainty. Long before maps and machines, humans trusted observation, memory, and each other. That trust carried them across water, into new lands, and toward a future none of them could imagine. In the end, the sea did not stop humanity, it shaped it. And 30,000 years ago, when early humans pushed fragile vessels into cold water, they were not just crossing oceans, they were crossing into the next chapter of human existence.